I'll call to order the Glendale Redevelopment Agency for July 5th, 2011. May we have a roll call, please?
Agency members Friedman.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Chairman Manukian.
Here. Can we have your report?
Agenda for the July 5th, 2011 regular meeting of the Glendale Redevelopment Agency was posted on Thursday, June 30th, 2011 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. We don't have any minutes. What is it, 5, please? Item 5.
There's one item, one card submitted for oral communication. Discussion is limited to items not part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Members of the Redevelopment Agency may question or respond to the speaker, but there'll be no debate or decision, and the matter may be referred to staff through the Executive Director for investigation and report.
The card is Mr. Mike Moyle.
Thank you, Housing Chairman. Redevelopment Agency. My name is Mike Mohill. Good afternoon. I'm here to talk about the Adult Recreation Center and the parkland next to the building itself. And the other night when I was here, we talked about how to use this land. And I've done some investigation about using that land. And is anybody here familiar with a thing called a pony league for soccer? These are for kids under the age of 17. And I would think it would be a wonderful thing to have these soccer playgrounds here and have a lot of volunteers from the grandparents and the parents would love to volunteer to teach the kids how to play soccer. Costs the city nothing, keeps the kids off the streets and gives them something to do. This would be for under the age of 17. It can be organized loosely, but the point is we need soccer fields for South Glendale, and this is a wonderful area. Other thing I'd like to talk about is the skate park I read about over here in Palmer Park. Another wonderful idea. When I was there a few weeks ago, actually about 6 months ago, I saw the kids using the water playground area as a place to jump. They didn't have any organized area to skate. So having some type of a skate park there would be a wonderful idea. Often children are ahead of the adults as to what they want in recreation. And I remember when I was a teenager, we didn't have any tennis courts up in North Glendale, and my sister ended up going ahead and we played tennis in the street. The manhole was the net, and the 2 telephone poles was the outside of the court. Well, lo and behold, finally, 10 years later, maybe 20, we finally had some tennis courts in Glendale. Of course, we also had a nice thing called a swimming pool called the Key, and for some reason, that swimming pool was eliminated. We need to keep the kids, their recreational we need more uses for the kids, more playgrounds for the kids. Now, we always seem to keep waiting for grants. A grant from the state, a grant from whatever it is. Why can't the city of Glendale, from the general fund, or whatever fund you want to call it, allocate a couple, $2, $3, and $4 million a year for the parks? Now, I know the budget right now is very tight. It may not be tight next year if we do some other things. But again, my main thing is I hope we can make some some soccer fields for the kids, specifically at the adult recreation area, because there's a lot of land there that hasn't been developed, and it's all in the planning stage. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, by the way, before I forget, what also prompted me to come here is in today's paper, in the GNP, Glendale News Press, they talked about Palmer Park. And it says the city council has authorized official to ask for a state grant to help revamp the park. Again, asking for state money. The old folks who used to run this city, they didn't have grants in the old days. Of course, we took down their pictures because when Parcher was here, okay, and Ginger was here, Jack Day was here. We weren't getting grant money. The city allocated from the general fund money for the parks. Today, if we don't get a grant money, nothing happens with the parks. Now, why is that? Since I have 51 more seconds, I'll tell you why. because all the money's going to where? Number one, pensions. Number two, salaries to pay for. Then the bonds, then fix the potholes, and then finally the kids would get a park. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mohill. I think I'm going to have to disagree with you in terms of what the former council members did. I think they didn't allocate enough money to the parks. That's why we're in a situation that we're in today. But I think we should grab as much money from the state as we can to bring it to Glendale to develop just exactly the programs that you're talking about. Of course, supplementing it with probably funds from the city. I did request when we were discussing the ARC, I did bring up the issue of having some fields there, but I don't think either the council or the staff was not. What was the response at that time when I requested, when we were talking about the adult recreation center and the green space development next to the adult recreation center, in terms of what was the response?
Conceptual ideas.
The response back when we were in the design stage, or?
Yes, it was last week, wasn't it? Last week or 2 weeks ago? We discussed the adult recreation center, the green space, what to do with it next to the adult recreation center. The 70,000 square feet, I think, wasn't it?
Well, it's been designed as passive space.
Passive space.
We're trying to do minimalist because we anticipate long-term it may potentially be used for subterranean parking, in which case the parking will be back on top, but we were trying to spend as little money as possible.
Right.
Still put it back in a usable condition.
In the meantime, if there's a need for, actually, under 17 kids are pretty big at 14, 15, 16, so maybe under 10 kids can use that area. Would that be usable?
Any flat space in this town that's green gets used.
Right.
So my guess is you go down there any Saturday or Sunday morning, you're going to see kids, kicking a soccer ball around.
No, I'm thinking more in terms of an organized, an AYSO thing where they need soccer fields for smaller kids much more than the older
Staff
ones.
can always looking at it. I think the feeling was this is a park by the adult recreation center that should be used for passive use, a place you can go downtown to have a picnic or sit in the park. But staff can look at, you're right, it's a flat space, so if there's a need for programming it could always be programmed.
Okay.
That's a higher need.
I think
If
we
you
should
want to
look into it.
look on the internet, you'll find at least 3 different size soccer fields. Like, you can put 3 of the small ones inside of one large one. It depends on the age group that you're trying to satisfy. I looked at that a couple of years ago.
Difficulty we do have is when you allow organized soccer play, the turf just gets destroyed, so there's no more green
Right,
space.
but what's important to kids or the turf, I agree with you. But I think with AYSO, what they do is they set up the temporary goals and they paint the fields themselves the day before the practices and all of that. So I think that will be a great use for the smaller kids because they certainly do run out of practice fields every time I've been involved with AYSO. The greatest detriment is because the younger ages, there's much more kids that are involved in the program, and there's literally no soccer fields available for the kids under 10, basically, under 12, let's say, that to practice on.
I'd suggest we toss that question to your Parks and Recreation Commission. Let them wrestle with that one, this balance between passive space and the need for soccer space. So that's a good issue for them to wrestle with relative to this park as it gets developed.
Please have them discuss parking requirements for any groups using it. There is no parking right there for that now. So that means using the Orange Street garage or competing with the library parking. So make sure they look at that.
Yeah, and whether an EIR would be required. I know we've got a few comments from neighbors who aren't thrilled with another location for a soccer field. Would an EIR be required for that use? Because it does change what the initial concept of the...
Although we wouldn't be putting in lights, we wouldn't be designing it for that purpose. It's just a flat green space. So, but we'll take a look at that as well.
Any other comments? What is next? We don't have anything else. Is there any agency members or staff comments?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we are adjourned.
Welcome to